They told me my heart stopped at 3:17 p.m. That's what the doctor said later. But I remember every second before it happened. I remember the smell of disinfectant, the low hum of machines trying to keep me alive, the way the air felt heavy, like it was waiting for something, waiting for me to stop fighting. And then I heard him, my son, my baby boy. The same child I once carried on my hip, the one I rocked to sleep through fevers and thunder. His voice was cold, not cruel, just empty. He was talking to the doctor like I wasn't even there. Doctor said we've done all we can. Without response, there's very little hope. My son said, she wouldn't want this. Mama always said she didn't want to suffer. I wanted to scream. I wanted to say, no, baby, not like this. I'm still here. I can still hear you. But I couldn't move. My body was a prison, still warm, but fading. Then came silence. The kind that doesn't just fill a room, it swallows it whole. And in that silence, I felt my hand grow cold, my chest grow still, my breath leave for good. The world disappeared, the beeping stopped. And then, nothing. People think death is just darkness. But it isn't. It's soundless. But alive somehow. I could feel something pulling me, gentle but certain, like a tide. I saw flickers of light. Faces I thought I'd forgotten. My husband's laugh, my mother's arms. And then, light. Not harsh, not bright, but warm, alive, soft. It surrounded me, wrapped around me like love itself. And I heard a voice, not from outside, but inside. Not yet. You still have something left to say. And then, air. Cold, sharp air filling my lungs. A gasp tore out of me, and my chest rose like something had just been reborn. I opened my eyes, and the doctors were frozen in place. One nurse dropped the clipboard. Another whispered, she's breathing. I was supposed to be gone. The machines had been turned off. But I came back breathing, crying, trembling alive. And in that moment, all I could think about was him, my son. The same boy who had signed those papers. He thought he lost a mother. But he didn't know what it meant to have one who refuses to die before. She's finished forgiving. They thought I was gone. But I came back for a reason. Not to live longer, but to tell this story. So no one forgets that love should never end where convenience begins. Before all this, before the hospital, before the silence, there was laughter in my house. I still remember the mornings when the smell of pancakes filled this very kitchen. Jason, my son, used to run in with messy hair, still in his pajamas, asking if I'd made the syrup too sweet again. And I'd laugh, pretending to scold him. Even though he was the reason my mornings ever felt alive. He was my only child. After my husband died, it was just the two of us against the world. I worked 3 jobs, cleaning offices, ironing clothes, even baking pies to sell at church on weekends. My hands would bleed from the work, but I didn't mind. Every ache felt worth it when I'd come home and see that boy asleep on the couch with his school books on his chest. He was my purpose, my reason. But somewhere along the way, time did what it always does. It took more than it gave. Jason grew up, got a good job, moved to the city. At first, he'd call every night, "You eat yet, Mama?" Those were his exact words. Then the calls turned into texts. Then the texts turned into silence. And in that silence, I started talking to the walls. I'd still set 2 plates for dinner sometimes, one for me, one for him, like he might walk through that door again, hungry and smiling. But he never did. He had a wife now, a house bigger than he needed, and a heart smaller than I remembered. When I got sick the first time, I didn't tell him. I thought, why worry him? He's got his own life. But when the second diagnosis came, the stroke that almost took me, he came rushing in, full of tears and apologies. He said all the right words. "Mama, I'll take care of you. You don't need to worry about anything." But words are light, baby. They fade faster than promises. After a few weeks, the visits grew shorter. The calls stopped again. And one evening, I overheard him talking to the doctor outside my room. "She doesn't know who I am half the time," he said. Maybe it's better if she goes peacefully." He thought I didn't hear. But a mother always hears. Even when her body fails, her heart doesn't. I wanted to call out to him, to remind him that I raised him to fight for family, not give up on it. But the words caught in my throat like broken glass. So, I just closed my eyes and prayed that one day he'd remember the woman who carried him through storms he didn't even know existed. They say time heals all wounds. But they never tell you that some wounds, especially the ones made by your own blood, they don't heal. They just teach you how to live with the scar. And when the doctors said I wouldn't wake up again, I think a part of Jason believed it was easier that way. Easier to let go than to remember. But God has a way of bringing back what the world throws away, and that's exactly what he did to me. It was raining that night. I remember it because I always loved the rain. When I was a little girl, my mama used to say rain meant heaven was washing the earth clean again. But that night, it felt like heaven was crying for me. The machines beside my bed beeped slower and slower, until they sounded more like echoes than heartbeats. Every breath felt like a goodbye. And in that dim light, I could see my reflection in the window, pale, fragile, fading. I whispered one last prayer. Not for myself, but for my son. "Lord," I said, "if this is it, please don't let him live with regret. Let him find peace, even if he forgot to fight for mine." Then everything went still. The rain stopped. The sound disappeared. Even time stood still. And in that stillness, I felt something, a warmth, slow and deep, moving through me like sunlight under my skin. I opened my eyes, and what I saw didn't belong to this world. There was light, soft, golden, alive. Not coming from somewhere, but being everywhere. The walls of the hospital faded away, and I was standing, standing in a field I didn't recognize but somehow remembered. The air smelled like rain and lilacs. The sky shimmered like dawn, even though there was no sun. And then, I wasn't alone. 3 figures stood in front of me, silhouettes made of light. Not solid, not shadow, just presence. One of them stepped closer, and though I couldn't see her face, I felt her smile. "Don't be afraid," she said, her voice like wind through a church choir. "You've carried too much pain, child, but your story isn't done yet." I looked down at my hands, the same old hands that had washed dishes, braided hair, wiped tears. They were glowing too, like they'd remembered what they were made of, something eternal. "Am I dead?" I whispered. The angel smiled again. "No, you're loved. And love doesn't die." She reached out her hand, and when her light touched me, every hurt, every sadness, every disappointment melted away like morning mist. I felt whole, not young, not old, just whole. And in that peace, I heard another voice, my husband's. "You can come home," he said gently. His voice so close I could almost feel his breath. "But not yet. He still needs to learn what love costs." And just like that, the light started to fade. The warmth turned into air. And that air turned into breath, real breath, filling my chest again. "She's breathing." Someone yelled. "We've got her back." My eyes opened, and I was back in that same hospital room. Tears on my cheeks, breath in my lungs, heartbeat pounding like thunder. The nurse cried. The doctor froze. And somewhere deep inside, I knew this wasn't just revival, it was purpose. They said I was gone, but God said, "Not yet." Because faith doesn't end when breath does. When I opened my eyes, everything felt different. The air was heavier, sharper, like the world had been waiting for me to breathe again. A nurse stood frozen by my bedside, her hand still hovering over the unplugged monitor. Tears streamed down her face. Behind her, 2 doctors stared like they'd seen a ghost. Doctor, this can't be possible. She's breathing. Nurse, but we turned off the machine hours ago. I blinked slowly. My lips trembled, the words barely forming. Water. I whispered. The nurse gasped, rushed forward, and held a cup to my lips. Her hands were shaking so hard that half the water spilled. It was the sweetest thing I'd ever tasted. Not because of the water, but because it meant I was alive. They ran tests, drew blood, whispered theories, but no science could explain what had happened. One doctor called it spontaneous recovery. Another said neurological anomaly. But I knew better. It wasn't science. It was grace. Then I saw him, my son. He stood in the doorway, pale as the hospital walls, his hands trembling. For a long moment, he couldn't move. He just stared at me like he was staring at a ghost. Jason. He flinched. His lips parted, but no sound came out. Jason, Mama, how? I smiled faintly. I guess heaven wasn't ready to deal with me yet. He walked toward me slowly, his eyes red, face wet, his voice breaking into pieces. Jason, they told me you were gone. The doctor said I signed the... Grandma interrupting softly. I know, baby. Jason, I thought I was helping you. I couldn't stand seeing you in pain. I looked at him, this man who used to sleep on my chest when he was a boy. Who once cried when I scraped my hand cooking dinner. And for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes, not of death, but of what he'd done. I wanted to be angry. I wanted to shout, to ask how my own blood could give up on me so easily. But I couldn't, because in that moment, all I saw was a broken boy who forgot how to love the way I taught him. So I reached out my hand, weak, trembling, and placed it on his cheek. I forgive you, Jason. You didn't kill me. You just forgot that miracles don't come with deadlines. He broke right there, dropped to his knees beside my bed, crying into my hands like he was 5 years old again, and I just held him. Like time had folded back, and we were both just trying to remember how to be a family again. That day, the doctors called it a miracle. The hospital called it a mystery, but I called it mercy. I died in front of the people who gave up on me, and came back for the one who needed to believe again. I spent 3 weeks in that hospital bed after coming back. 3 weeks of doctors asking the same questions, nurses smiling through disbelief, and my son never leaving my side. Jason would sit in that little blue chair every day, his eyes swollen from crying, his hands always busy, folding napkins, holding my hand, doing anything but letting go again. Sometimes we'd sit in silence. Other times he'd whisper, I'm sorry, Mama. And every time, I'd tell him, you don't need to be sorry, baby. Just be better. Because I didn't come back to make him feel guilt. I came back so he could feel grace. Every day, I got a little stronger. The nurses called me the miracle lady. The doctors said they'd never seen anything like it. One even told me, you're proof that something greater than medicine exists. I smiled and said, that something is faith. When I finally left the hospital, the air outside felt different, thicker, real, alive. The sky was a color I'd never noticed before. Every sound, birds, cars, even footsteps felt like music I'd forgotten how to hear. And in that moment, I realized something. God doesn't just give life once. He gives it again. To remind us why it's worth living. There was a time I thought faith was just words we said at church. But now I know it's the breath we take when everything else is gone. It's what wakes you up when the world has already said goodbye. Jason visits every Sunday now. He fixes my porch light, brings groceries. Sometimes just sits with me while I sip my tea. He still carries guilt. I can see it in his eyes. But I don't feed it. I feed love. Because love is what saved me. He asked me once, Mama, what did you see when you were gone? I smiled and said, I saw peace, baby. But peace didn't want me yet. Sometimes at night, when the wind rustles through my window, I still feel that light. It's like a whisper, reminding me that I'm not here by accident. that I came back for a reason. And that reason is to remind people that it's never too late for faith. If you're listening to this right now, if you're tired, scared, or feeling forgotten, remember this. You are not alone. Even when it feels like everyone's walked away, heaven hasn't. And sometimes, the miracle isn't in the healing, it's in the hope that refuses to die. The doctors said I had 6 months, but God gave me another lifetime. Not to prove them wrong, but to remind the world that faith always has the final word. Not today, my child. Not today.